And in these 8 slides, I'm going to run through what I preach as the best practices about rolling EOS out to your organization. And it's really about increasing the ROI that you get out of your EOS implementation. Let me talk about the why a little bit. So this is why, for me, from my simple perspective, fewer, more effective meetings throughout the whole organization and more results with the same resources. Again, back to like the higher return on investment for your EOS implementation. Let me give you some of the credibility enhancing background on myself, just the simple stuff. So I've been an entrepreneur for 29 years, originally, from the United States, originally Minnesota, and the last 20 years, Chicago. 8 startups over that period of time. I've been an EOSI now for 9 years. That's an EOS implementer, a certified coach in this system. I've taken 77 leadership teams through the journey. On top of that, I am also a co-founder of Traction Tools, the software for EOS, and we'll be using that today for IDSing. And then more recently, I'm on the investment committee for the growth fund that invests in EOS businesses. And so profitable businesses running on EOS, and that's also a really exciting opportunity. And I'm excited how EOS is permeating all parts of my professional life. If there is such a thing as a purpose or a calling, being an EOS implementer is mine. And I take great pride in the results that my clients get. And it's super fulfilling for me. So I'm delighted that you came today and that I get to share this with you. Let's talk about the agenda. So this is what I'm going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about department quarterly planning, which leads to the L10 launch in the departments. And then the same system that we talk about rolling out to the departmental teams is the same exact process you'll use to roll it out to a 3rd layer or a 4th layer inside your organization, depending on how many layers you have. We're also going to touch on the state of the company, which is a 4-time-a-year pulse that is super powerful. And then the quarterly conversations, again, a 4-time-a-year pulse on those. Those quarterly conversations are sometimes called quarterly coaching, and in most of the EOS books, they are referred to as the 5-5-5. Lastly, and with over half of the time we have today, we'll be IDSing and doing Q&A. So my 8-slide PowerPoint that we're already 3 slides in is only going to take about 25 minutes of our time. You'll see at the bottom here, during the Q&A or the IDSing later, everybody can text in issues. You can also put them in the chat, but it's a bit more functional if you text them in to Traction Tools. And so if you want to, you can capture that text in information down on the bottom of the screen now. You could take a picture of the screen. The other alternative, and I guess the thing I'm advocating, is that you can just wait another 15 or 20 minutes until I'm done with the content. And then you can text in the questions that I haven't answered. I think a lot of the questions that you have right now are hopefully will be answered here in the next 20 minutes as I run through the content I've prepared. This information, that phone number, as well as the code, will be over in the IDSing section at the end. So if you don't capture it now, it'll be right there for you to do it later. If you've never used this functionality of Traction Tools, you text EOS ROI to that number. It'll then ping you back and ask you for your name. And you give your name, and then anything you text after that will end up on our issues list and will be seen by everybody on this call. Please be appropriate. So here we go. The level 10 rollout. This is a transition for some leaders because you've been used to becoming a good leader and learning EOS on your own. And now you must become a trainer of your reports. So to some degree, the same training that you've received, either through your EOS implementer or reading the books or subscribing to Basecamp, however you and your leadership team have become proficient at this, now you must transition to training your direct reports in the same way. And then ultimately, you must become trainers of trainers. You can see on the right-hand side. And so this is a big growth opportunity for most people on leadership teams. So you transition from learner to trainer, and then you transition to training leaders on how to do this to train others. The first thing I'm going to start with here is the department quarterly pulse. So I want to give a bit of a disclaimer here. A number of these things we're covering today are not outlined in a high level of specificity within the books or other places that you find thought leadership on EOS. And so I want to preface this by saying these are the best practices I've come up with through my 77 clients and my experience with my own businesses. So here's how it goes. We have the leadership team offsite. And then when you're ready to roll out to your department teams, within 1 to 7 days of the leadership team offsite, you'll schedule an offsite with each one of those departments you're going to roll out EOS to. You'll schedule a 3 to 4 hour meeting. The first time, of course, it will not be in place of the level 10, like those brown words say there. 3 to 4 hours. Subsequent quarters, once the level 10 is running, you'll do it in place of the level 10 that week. It's the same agenda as the leadership team quarterly offsite. Everything's just abbreviated a bit. And we also don't edit the vision side of the VTO, so that saves some time. In the yellow on the bottom there, facilitated by a leader in the organization who is not on the team. So often what this looks like is the integrator is coming in and facilitating the ops department offsite, or the finance department offsite, or maybe the ops leader is facilitating the sales and marketing, and the sales and marketing leader is facilitating the ops department. But there's power in having an outsider be your facilitator, so that as a leader of your department, you can fully participate with your team. And the purpose here is alignment, prioritization, and goal setting. The same thing that you're doing at the leadership team. So the first time that you do this, either whether it's with your department teams that report to the leadership team, or you're going from the second layer in your organization to the third or the fourth, the first time you do this, you're going to want to come in with a bunch of education, and you're going to go through the model, and you're going to have them read some books, and then follow this script. It happens right after the leadership team offsite. It's 3 to 4 hours, same agenda, facilitated by some other leader in your organization, and you can see the goals in the lower right. Now I'm going to run through the state of the company. This is one of the other quarterly rhythms. And then in the last slide of this deck, I'm going to pull all this together, and I'm going to show you what it looks like on a timeline for the quarter. So it should make a lot more sense at that point. So first, the state of the company. This happens after your department planning. So you have your leadership team offsite. Within 1 to 7 days, you have all of the departments reset their rocks and do their planning for the quarter. And then you have a state of the company. This is an all hands meeting. The logistics to this can be complex sometimes, depending on your number of locations and the logistics. But I've had clients that have done it all kinds of ways, and we can speak to that during the issue solving or the Q&A. If this is the first or second state of the company that you're doing, do a model review. And the model are the 6 key components. That's the thing that often looks like a wheel or a pizza with 6 slices in the EOS tools. So it's the thing that includes the vision, people, data, the issues, the process, and the traction. Those are the 6 key components of the model. And make no mistake, when you're doing this, you're selling your organization on EOS. So the first or second quarter you do this, you go through the model and make sure that you're passing out some books. You'll have to decide if you're going to pass out What the Heck is EOS or Traction. Those are the 2 most highly recommended books for the launch within your organization. I would just recommend that the leadership team has read both of those, and then you can make a good choice from there on what you're going to pass out. If you are deciding on passing out the What the Heck books, I know that you can buy them in bulk from the publisher. I believe it's $10 a book. And once you're on your 3rd quarterly state of the company meeting, I don't think you need to do the model review anymore, and the book passing out's already done. So you schedule this meeting for an hour. Again, now this is running somewhere between like 5 and 10 days after the leadership team offsite at the beginning of your quarter. It's usually over breakfast and you've brought in some food, or it's over lunch and you've brought in some food. So the first 10 minutes, you review the past quarter's company rocks. And this is where the leadership team is either on Zoom or in person, all up front. And they're saying, we got 5 out of 7 of our rocks done last quarter. We told you these were the 7 most important things. These are the 5 that we got done. These are the 2 that we did not. That's on us as a leadership team. Here's our completion percentage. That's about 3 minutes of the 10 minutes. The second piece of that is that you, quote unquote, sell the new company rocks. You introduce them, or you enroll the company in what the new priorities are for the quarter. And this is where whoever's accountable for each one on the leadership team takes about 1 minute and introduces those 3 to 7 most important things for the next 90 days. This brings a lot of organizational alignment around the energy and the people. So that's 10 minutes. You can review the past, and it holds the leadership team accountable. They know they're going to have to report in front of the whole company on the company rock completion percentage. So you're creating accountability for yourselves as leaders. This also causes the leadership team to get a higher percentage of the company rocks done. No leader wants to show up in front of the entire company and say we were 3 out of 7 on our company rocks this quarter. Okay? So allow yourself to be within that accountability structure. The next 30 minutes, you go through the VTO. And I think of the 30 minutes that you're running through the VTO, now keep in mind, you're going from core values through the 1-year plan. I advocate for the bulk of the time being spent on core values, where you do some core value shout outs, and ultimately your people are giving core value shout outs to each other. We can talk about that further if anybody needs that. And then the 3-year picture. The 3-year picture is a vivid visualization of your near term, and it is super important psychologically that when you're talking about the 3-year picture, that you come from a place of when, not if. Your people will be paying attention to your level of belief and confidence in this path. And so whenever you as leaders speak to the VTO, and specifically the 3-year picture, please be saying, well, when it's 12/31 of 22, this will be true, and then this will be true, and then we're going to be at this revenue number and this gross margin number. And then the 1-year plan is also critically important. That 4 times a year, the entire company gets really present to the most important 3 to 7 goals for the business. So that takes up 21 of your 30 minutes on this state of the company, and the remaining 9 minutes, of course, cover the rest of the VTO. Cover your cover the core focus, your 10-year target, your marketing strategy, your long-term issues list. Then there's about 10 minutes on the accountability chart. The accountability chart, the best practice is that's constantly updated, but at the very least, that there's 4 times a year that thing is made perfect. You can also print one of those off if you've got a large scale printer, post it in your conference room where you hold your leadership level 10s. It's nice to have something to reference when IDSing people issues and accountability throughout the quarter. So that's the 30 minutes on the VTO, the 10 minutes on the accountability chart, and then 10 minutes of Q&A, and then everybody's back to work. That's your state of the company. The other component I want to talk about are the quarterly conversations. So these are 4 times a year. They are 1-on-1. Every boss to every employee, somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes long. It is a very casual coaching conversation where you are not able to use the word review or talk about money. When you are doing these, if you use the word review or talk about money, you end up creating anxiety unnecessarily. Now, some people will want you to document these in great detail, and other companies don't document them at all. That's something that you have to decide for yourself. On this topic, there is one of the EOS books written by a good friend of mine, Renee Bohr, called How to Be a Great Boss. You can pick that up, and that does go through this stuff in detail. But here's the classic overview that I teach my clients on this. So there are 3 things that we want to cover: rocks, roles, and values. And my memory trick for this, which I got from Ed Callahan, long-term EOS implementer, is that rock and roll creates value. And for me, I like rock and roll, so it's really easy for me to remember what's included in these quarterly conversations. So it's rock and roll creates value. The rocks are your special projects where you're building a better business for the future, removing major obstacles and barriers to more success, or launching new huge opportunities for growth. Rocks are not your regular job, is what I want to emphasize with this. Your role is your regular job, and that's defined between the accountability chart and any scorecard metrics you're accountable for. That's the essence of your regular job. And so most leaders have 5 bullet points on the accountability chart and another 2 to 4 scorecard metrics they're accountable for. So we're talking about between 7 and 9 bullet points that define what it is to succeed at your regular job. And then the core values is how well you're a cultural fit. And when I do this with my folks, and what I train my clients on is that we go through the rocks and we say, hey, what happened last quarter with the rocks for you? Oh, you were 3 out of 4 for 75%. As your boss, what could have I done better to help you get to 4 out of 4? Okay, what are your rocks this quarter? Let's see how I can help accelerate or support you. Let's learn from what we did last quarter together as boss and employee so I can support you more. EOS promotes a paradigm where bosses are helpers, not disciplinarians or people there to crack the whip, but boss is helper. So that's the conversation around rocks. What happened last quarter? What's going on with them this quarter? And what can I do to help? The next thing is the role. And now I would look at those 7 to 9 bullet points that define what succeeding in their regular job looks like. And I ask my direct report, I say, of these 7 to 9 things, which are you succeeding at fantastically? And which one is your biggest area for improvement? And then I do the same thing. I pick the positive and the negative from the 7 to 9, and then we share our answers. We have a quick, loving conversation between each other, and we often have picked the same things for improvement. And sometimes we create a to-do out of that. Sometimes it becomes a rock for the future. You know, there's a lot of different outcomes. Sometimes it just raises awareness and nothing gets documented. And then the core values, I do the same thing. I say, hey, here's our 3 to 4 company core values. Which one are you the best fit for and which one's your area for improvement? I do the same. We exchange feedback. And that's the quarterly conversations. Again, sometimes called quarterly coaching, sometimes called the 555. So let me tie this all together before we go on to the Q&A or the IDSing on these topics. So this is 13 weeks at a glance. This is your quarter that you get 4 times a year. So you can see over on the far left-hand side, that is LT stands for leadership team. So that's your leadership team offsite. Then within 10 days of that, you do all of your department offsites and planning and have your state of the company. So within 7 to 10 days of your leadership team offsite, you have aligned all of the people in your organization, all of the energy, all of the resources are aligned and prioritized, and we know who's accountable for what for the next 13 weeks. Then we charge out of the gate. You want to get going as fast as possible on your rocks, and what this means is after rock setting, try to start every one of your rocks within the next 48 hours. A little bit like going to the Kentucky Derby and the bell going off. No horse stays in the chute. You got to get out of the gate fast to win on your rocks. Halfway through the quarter is QC, stands for quarterly conversation. Halfway through the quarter is when I'd like everybody in the organization to be getting their one-on-one between every boss and every employee. I think I like it in the center of the quarter because the beginning of the quarter already has a lot of administrative planning and meetings in it, as you can see. And the end of the quarter, on the right-hand side, we've got a heavy push to finish all the rocks. And we're gathering issues for the leadership team quarterly offsite, which is coming up again. So this is a nice way to spread out some of this EOS work and the EOS process throughout the 13 weeks.